Hey everyone, I want to go over the market before I leave for the cruise, but also show you exactly what I like to look at as soon as the trading day begins. So you can see, log into my broker platform right now. Should be populating. All right, there we go. Look, I got $1.29 in this account. Let's change accounts, shall we? I don't think we'll be doing much trading with the $1.29, right? All right, so got my charts uploaded here, and let's make sure we're on video. Okay, perfect. So you can see I always keep my market eternals up here, and I just want to do a quick rundown of, it's 8:33 a.m. What's happening in the market. So I already looked on my phone and saw we do have a little gap down in the futures. Let's get the let's get some after hours data on one of these charts here. Let's see if we get after hours here. All right, there we go. So you can see S&P futures, a little gap down this morning, down about 25 points. We did have some news, I believe, in Apple. Let's turn on after hours data. I believe we had some, Apple down about $2 pre-market, and then Nvidia got a subpoena, and we're right at 105. This is what I was looking for, actually. Not necessarily today, but on yesterday's sell-off, I was looking for a sell-off to Nvidia. You can see 105 is the trend line I have, and we're printing their pre-market. What are we at? 105.88. And then the next level for Nvidia will be 100. That will be just a big round number, 100. You're going to have lots of people who bought Nvidia with their stop losses at 100. So let's say you bought Nvidia all up in here. Where are you going to put your stop just from an emotional point of view? 100. So that would be your stop loss or your sell stop. So if we break below 100, what's going to happen to Nvidia? We're probably going to flush a quick move. Think of it this way. You're walking on thin ice. You're bouncing around that $100. Once you get there, the ice cracks. You go into the cold water. So that's where you'll have that avalanche of sell orders, and we'll probably print down probably 98, maybe 95. If Avgo misses earnings, maybe 90. I know that sounds doomsday-ish, but just keeping it real. Spot VIX is up. Pre-market, what are we at? 23.16, up about 12%. So I have those SEP 16 calls, which are doing fantastic, but paid at like $1.24, so they should be, what now, about $7 or so. So that would be nice. A good hedge. Now I want to look at some of the positions I have. So let's first go to Urban, the outfitter man. We did have some more. Obviously, the chart is horrendous. Let me put a little alert here in case we break below while I'm sailing the 7 seas here. Put a, again, just kind of like Nvidia, stop loss at 100. I like to have marks at big round numbers or support and or resistance. So Urban, obviously horrible chart. That's why I'm long calls. Duh. But we did have some more call buyers yesterday in Urban. So that was, look at this. So they could be dead wrong, but they added, I think, like 2,500 of the 36 calls. They bought some 37 calls at 55. Those went up to like 90 cents in about 10 minutes. A volatility spiked, and then obviously when the market sold off, they sold off. So the short-dated options moved a lot. And then the Pinterest, I think they added some calls in pins. Lots of open interests and pins, but now it's almost too far out the money. That might not work out because you see all the out the money calls that are now very far out the money unless there's big news or the market gets a nice little rally there, right? There looks to be some pre-market news I always like to look at, like Intel down, Intel getting crushed. Man, those Intel puts yesterday, they were pretty good. They happened right in the morning too yesterday. The 20.5 puts, now they're, getting juicy. So Intel going to weigh down some chips. So basically that whole earnings pop gave it back from Friday. That's why very important you want to be proactive, not reactive. We went over this in the training yesterday. And what I mean by that is, you saw lots of Intel calls like these November 25 calls on August 30th, right at the morning, 10:30 a.m. But what happened to the stock? Well, if we go back and look, that was right here. So if someone's buying calls, the stock's already up 8% on the day. It's the dead high of the day. That would be considered reactive. Obviously, you would like to buy calls proactive, so maybe here, and then sell when it has news, right? So always think of that. If you're chasing a stock, are you being reactive or proactive? Proactive, you buy before the move, and then you usually sell during the move. And that's a good question to ask yourself before getting into a position. Am I being proactive or am I getting reactive? If the stock's up 5, 6, 7%, would you be a seller if you were long calls, or do you want to buy? Think of it that way. Sometimes you'll be forced to sell, right? Or forced to buy because, momentum and maybe, the market's bouncing and, it could be a certain situation, right? So just keep it that way. I always think of the pimple commercial. I don't know if anyone remembers back in the day, I think with, was it Vanessa White? She was like a supermodel girl, very pretty. And she would put on her proactive pimple cream and say, look, no pimples in the morning. You want to stop them before they form. So just try to remember that analogy. I'm trying to think of the girl right now. Let me pull it up. I think it was Vanessa. Was it? Vanessa Williams. Was it? Am I losing my mind? It was. Man, I'm good. It was her. Proactive. You see, she's got the clear skin. All right, but let's look at some of the flow as well, because we want to keep an eye on what's going on in the markets. Let's first look at market eternals, and we'll get into flow. Where did the trend finish? Pretty normal, nothing extreme. Extreme would be like 2 to 0.6. You could look at the NYSE tick yesterday. It was pretty dismal. Negative 800 ticks, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And we almost hit some negative 1,000 ticks, which is some intense selling. And you can see we really didn't have any kind of positive tick territory. 1 800 print, that's it. So very, very bearish. ADD line looked horrendous. This is stocks advancing versus stocks declining. And, it was kind of weird. We had the gap down and just nothing was moving yesterday. Besides the NASDAQ stocks selling off. But once you had that kind of morning sell-off, it was just kind of like sideways for most of the day. And then you had some flushing out there. I will say some of the big names like Apple are really, Apple really starting to weigh down, not only the NASDAQ, but spot Dow. And then, so if you look at the Dow, we're only down 58, which is nothing. But if you look at the Dow big stocks, Goldman yesterday, huge sell-off. You had Caterpillar, pretty big sell-off, and then you had Boeing, massive sell-off. You see, and this is a good example, actually, of that flush. You see how Boeing, not really doing much here, and then yesterday it starts to sell off, and you see how it takes out the prior low, and what happened? It sold off on volume. I bet as soon as we took out that prior low, which is about 162, let's say, and a half, I bet you we flushed on volume. So let's take a look yesterday. 162 and a half, that's right here, and look at volume, right? Maybe even go to a 1 minute so you can see. 162 and a half, right here. Well, let's see if we can just get a straight volume chart with nothing in it. Do we have just a blank chart? Can we pull up here? Let's go to volatility. You see volatility spiked. That's a huge amount of vol spiking there, I'll tell you that much. But something good to look at. Let's see if we show volume. There we go. Perfect. You see volatility spike literally as we took it out as well. So remember, when stocks go down, there we go. 162 and 162 and a half. There we go. See the big volume pop and then vol spiking. Remember, when stocks go down, vol goes up. So if you're in puts, not only are you right on direction with puts, but also your volatility is going to help out there. So some longs I do like. Kroger did very well on this one yesterday. Flight to safety and food stocks. Sold some calls and then holding the balance of calls through the earnings event. Unless we get like another gap up and I can sell the calls at maybe like $3-4. So that's good. And then Sprouts is another food stock that's been holding up very well. I mean, all the food stocks. You look at Pep, those Pep calls yesterday on the penny option scanner did very well. Coca-Cola, flight to safety, basically. Think of it like as high dividend stocks, bonds. Usually when you have market fear, you have a flight to safety in those. Then let's look at some of the junky stocks that I like. So for longs, I like obviously my positions, Penns, Urbans, but also I like some of the junky stocks. Speaking of, look at the big pop today in it. Space, ASTS. Look at that stock rip already pre-market. This is a stock obviously super strong. I think it's a name you rotate to, and then obviously the more Trump favors the polls, the better for the stock because he's big into space, right? So that's going to be good for that name. Have we seen any flow in space? Let me keep an eye on here just for a minute. And then some other names, Lunar, it's a smaller play. Caught this one pretty good the other day. And then Rocket Lab. Not the best. To be honest, I like ASTS. Just keep it simple, right? Stick with what works. Don't try to get too frisky with it. I do like that little stock too, Lumen. This is not a space stock, but Big Short report out on it the other day. I think it could squeeze actually, if any good news. So I do like that one. Kind of if you get the market bouncing, look for space, ASTS. Look for either Game Junk. Game Junk has earnings upcoming, 9/10. I don't know if it's official yet, so maybe just stick with the set monthly options. But you can see in Game Junk, we've been seeing some good flow in there. I think Rose mentioned yesterday she closed out, I think it was 74%. So it did take a little bit of time for these calls to work. Fully admit it, you can see they were about 26th, 27th, 23rd. So it's not like it was instant results. So August, you could see, look, like down in here, they were buying August 26th. They were buying this dip, and now you had, GameStop with a big rally. So it's something to keep an eye on with the GameStop. You do get the earnings event, and what you could do, so this is a little strategy that I like to imply or implement, I guess is the better word, is buying calls leading up to the earnings event, and then you can sell some ahead of the earnings and then keep some on. Why? Because of implied vol. So let's look at Game Junk. So you can see how vol is relatively light because the stock has not moved in quite some time, right? Compared to this, the roaring kitty move. So into the earnings event, what happens to volatility? It goes up. So if you're in calls, the price of your calls, especially the out the money calls, is going to increase in value. So the stock doesn't even have to go up. You could make money just on the implied vol going up in the calls. Well, if the stock goes up ahead of earnings like it did here, it's kind of a double whammy. You get direction right, and you get implied volatility helping your options. So it could be really, really big. Volatility, you can see, is starting to creep up in GameStop. Why? Because of the earnings event upcoming. So what you could do is buy calls, make money possibly on implied vol, and then hopefully you get direction right. And I bet you the implied vol, or I bet you the implied move, I should say, is probably, the stock's at $23, maybe a little over $2 right now. Shall we pull it up for September? There we go. Pretty much spot on. The 22.5 calls are about 220, 224. Next week gets earnings, or you can just go to the monthlies, about 250. And I'm going to assume these probably get to $3 ahead of the earnings event. So even if GameStop stays flat and is at 23 a share, I bet you they move up to $3 because they'll probably think, hey, GameStop's going to have a big implied move, and they're going to panic and jack up the price of the options. So something to keep an eye on there. That little space stock up $3 now, ASTS pre-market. So a little move already, right? And we're early. Obviously, keep an eye out on the flow. Nothing really struck me huge yesterday. Um, some ZS puts, those are going to do well. Stock's getting crushed pre-market, down $30. Wow. I know the Uber puts, they actually started finally to work. I know y'all hate Uber, and I don't blame y'all. All the chips like Marvel gave back the whole earnings pop. So you see a lot of puts in chip stocks, obviously with Avgo reporting earnings this week. Again, though, I mean, personally, I think the big move in chips was yesterday. That was basically the earnings event. You had, Nvidia down 10%. Wells Fargo, $1 million in puts, probably a hedge if doomsday happens. You see some on there. Another semiconductor, WDC, another chip, right? So a lot of mixed flow in chips because of the big sell-off yesterday. Supermicro got downgraded this morning. They had that huge short seller report. The trader made about $6 million on that trade, so pretty good for them. And then very light flow. Obviously, with the market sell-off, you're not going to see anything crazy. Nasdaq futures starting to bounce here a little bit, so keep an eye out on market internals. Keep an eye out on the flow. I don't think you go big right now. I don't think you try to be a hero calling the market bottom or top. Stick with what's working. And to be honest, that's been day trading. It has for the past really like 2 or 3 weeks. Day trading has been fantastic, and everything else, has been difficult. There's no sugarcoating that. And if you are like, I don't know what Nvidia or what AMD or what Apple or Meta is going to do, stick with the girl you brought to the prom. Boring. Not saying she's boring, but the boring stocks that move slow and steady, the Coca-Colas, the Pepsis, the GIS, the Kraft Foods, stick with those names. The T's, the Verizons. I know they're not like fun and exciting, not going to get 5% moves, but you could get a 1% move in Coke, and those calls could be up 30, 40, 50%. Or you get like a 2% move in Pepsi, those calls could be up triple digits. So keep an eye on that. You see some AMC calls. That's what I think you do. You either stick with the food and beverage stocks if you want to swing trade and, play it boring, or you go full junkie mode, not in the big cap Mag 7s, but in the meme stocks, the SoFis, the AMCs, the GameStops, the Lumens, the ASTS, those names, because they can move despite what the S&P is doing. They can beat to their own drum. And then if you're right, let's say you're right on direction like ASTS, and you get a market bounce from here, those stocks will be up 10, 15, 20%, right? So look at those kind of names. If you want to get your fix in, if you're like, Lance, I'm dying to trade, you're going to be on the cruise, I need to get my fix in, stick with those meme stocks. Don't go huge, don't bet the farm and all that jazz, but they're going to be a lot of fun. I hope it all helps. Chat with you guys soon.